Hi everybody, FPL Witty here, back for another of my weekly FPL videos. If you've been around and seen a few of them, you'll know the drill by now. If you're new around here, then it's good to have you here. Just to remind you that the idea of these videos is that we get out once a week, just have a bit of a chat about FPL, what's going on, and there's certainly plenty going on at the moment, despite no games having just taken place. Lots to think about. So we have a natter about some of the key issues, have a walk in the Yorkshire countryside, keep fit, and keep these to about 15 minutes, so that's the plan. So I hope you're well. Certainly very different video to the ones we'd normally be looking at, of course, after the sad events of this week with the passing of the Queen. I mean, I'm in my late 50s. She's the only monarch I've ever known. It's a hugely sad occasion for the UK. So we got the entire game week 7 wiped out, of course, cancelled as a mark of respect. I've seen that split opinion quite a bit this week. I think certainly the government, the FA, it was ultimately who had the decision, had a very difficult decision to make, and they decided to cancel the games as a mark of respect. I thought at the time it was probably the right thing to do. I think certainly people looking in from outside perhaps underestimate a little bit the magnitude of what's just happened, but it was a tough call from the FA. But games were cancelled, so we'll never quite know how the game week 7 would have worked out, and we'd have probably spent quite a bit of time talking about what happened. But as I say, there's plenty to talk about in terms of the implications of the next game week, and perhaps what it does. It affects our chip strategy as well, doesn't it, for over the next few days as well. So certainly worth putting a video out, I think, just to talk it through. I think many fans thought that the games could perhaps have gone ahead. I think sport can be a great unifier, really, can't it, in adversity. And I think in many ways it would have helped people to come together and show their respect together, get the games played. But I can certainly see both sides of it, so I think we should respect both arguments. But it's been and gone now, so the big question, of course, is what's going to happen to game week 8? Because whilst the first game week 7 was cancelled as a gesture of respect, game week 8 is very different, because the major issues that we may have now are ones of security, particularly in London, with millions expected to descend on the capital ahead of the funeral next Monday. So the weekend games, particularly in London, may be perhaps in doubt. So that's 3 games there. That will be Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs, Leicester, and Brentford, Arsenal. So we're just going to have to see how that one plays out. Of course, there are resources needed perhaps to be taken from other parts of the country, so it's perhaps a little bit more wide-ranging than that, so we'll have to see. I think certainly if game week goes ahead, then it will very much depend on how many games take place as to what we all do as well. I think it seems likely that we'll get some games, so the question is how many. Of course, the Brighton Crystal Palace game was postponed for a rail strike in game week 8. And even though the rail strike's been suspended, I suspect that game will probably still be cancelled. Both teams are not in Europe, so I think it's easy to slot that game back in at some stage. So we'll just have to see how that develops. And of course, by the time you're watching this, then we may have a few more answers. So it's a moving picture, really, isn't it? In terms of the game week 7 fallout, really, I mean, because I rolled my transfer, I came out with a small green arrow, so we'll take that. 5 green arrows out of 6. A small positive. We'll never know whether it would have been a green or a red if the games had been played, but those that took a points hit will have had a bit of a red arrow this week. Those who rolled the transfer, a nice green. Those who made multiple transfers could still have had a red arrow, because the big divider when teams are level is the number of transfers you made. So if you've made a couple of transfers, you could still have had a red arrow, but very small in the scheme of things, of course. So what to do about game week 8? Well, I think, to be honest, we should await more information. We don't know yet how many games are going to take place. Of course, price changes are happening all the time, which puts a bit of pressure on some of those decisions. So we'll see how that one plays out. I think from my point of view, I've lost my 2 Brighton players at least, probably in game week 8. So if everything else is taking place, I'll probably make 2 transfers that I've got and get a side out for game week 8. My plan was always to wildcard in game week 9 during the international break. So we'll see how that one goes. I think if I lose any more players, to postpone games. And of course we've got the European action as well, 7 teams in action in midweek. We always avoid making transfers when that's happening anyway, don't we? So I think if I lose any more players, I'll be potentially forced to play a chip. Let's talk about FPL giving us all an extra free hit chip, so we'll have to see if that happens. Precedent was set last year, but of course there was multiple game weeks of chaos for that to happen, wasn't there? Those with wildcards have had their game week 7 wildcards rolled into this week, so they're potentially in a fairly good position. I think if multiple game weeks are lost, whilst the free hit is a good option to deal with what's left, I think because I'm likely to wildcard in game week 9, I think it's perhaps a viable strategy for me to bring that forward a week, really. Play it in game week 8, set myself up for the game week 8 fixtures with an eye on the fixture runs beyond that as well, so I can potentially match what the free hitters do this week and use my wild card instead. And then I've still got my free hit for later in the season. It's a very, very powerful chip, the free hit. So I think if you can save it, it's probably best to do so. I think if you've already used your wild card, then the free hit becomes more of an option. So certainly a lot to think about. So we can only see what develops. I think the important thing is at the moment is to stay calm and see what news develops. The funeral is going to be a huge event, of course, on Monday, so big implications for policing, so we can only just wait and see what happens, really. So I think what you probably need to do is start drafting a few free hits and wild cards, no harm in that, just to see how your team will look. But keep your ear to the ground for news of what might happen. I think from my perspective, I've got 2 Brighton players. It's pretty easy to bench Pascal Gross if that's the only game that's off. My frustration is that I've got Sanchez in goal. I made the move from Ramsdale a couple of weeks ago because Ramsdale was injured, or supposedly injured, but he wasn't. I didn't gain anything on that transfer as they've matched each other since. And now potentially I've got no goalkeeper. Depends on what happens to the Spurs fixture, but even if the Spurs fixture goes ahead, I've got Ward of Leicester playing at Spurs, and we don't even know if he's going to keep his place at the moment, so potentially I've got no goalkeeper, which is a concern. I could make that transfer, of course. I've got 2. I think my most likely moves will be to perhaps move Robertson on. He's He's probably on last chance saloon anyway against Wolves. Never got a chance to see if he left me with that double figure leaving present. So I'll probably move Robertson on. Trippier seems a very popular buy at the moment, particularly with fixtures. And that would leave me with enough money to bring Mitrovic in, who seems to be absolutely on fire at the moment, doesn't he? Seems fixture proof, and the fixtures he's got now are superb fixtures. So I think certainly Trippier and Mitrovic are on my shopping list. I feel in some ways I'm a couple of moves behind the curve, because I think a lot of people will already have Trippier and Mitrovic. They can probably deal with the Leicester goalkeeper situation. They can maybe have a punt on a Salah replacement if Chelsea Liverpool goes ahead and Salah has that tricky fixture. There'll be a lot of a punt on Rashford or De Bruyne. So I think in many respects I'm a couple of moves behind the curve at the moment, which I'm not overly optimistic about game week 8. But of course it will all change if games get postponed, and in which case I'll probably go down the early wildcard route. So we'll see how that one develops. If you want to follow my team more closely, I'll be on writing articles for Fantasy Football Geek. I've got one out this week. I'll be here, of course. You can follow me on Twitter at FPL Witty. And if you like the videos, I'll be doing them every week. You can like and subscribe, and I'll be here again. You've probably noticed that unlike most weeks when I've been out walking, I've got a bit of rain this morning. Probably see it on me. So I did want to still get out this morning because I've got a busy week ahead. Fortunately the weather's a bit better. I've got a round of golf, a trip to the seaside, a day at the races. I've got a busy week ahead, so probably my only chance I'm going to get this week to get these videos out. So yeah, stay calm everybody. Certainly sad times at the moment, but keep an eye on the news. We'll see what happens. I hope you have a good game week 8, whatever it turns out to be, whatever strategy or route that you take. So look after yourselves, and I'll see you again on the other side after game week 8, and we'll see what happens. So I better get out of this rain, and as they say in Barnsley, I'll see it.